Hello, my name is Michelle and I work at Rare. One of my favorite things to do in the wintertime is to head out on the trails and look for wildlife tracks in the snow. Today I'm going to teach you a few basic skills to help you identify any tracks you might find this winter. When I find an animal track that I want to identify, there's a few main things I look for to help me figure out what animal it might belong to: size, shape, pattern, and location. The first thing I look for is size. The size of a track will give you an immediate idea of the size of the animal that left it. For example, the size of a mouse track is going to be very different from the size of a deer track. Sometimes if you look up wildlife tracks online or in an ID guide, you'll notice that there's a coin in the photo next to the animal track. This isn't because they dropped some change out of their pocket when they took the photo. People will sometimes do this to give a size scale to their photos so that they have an idea of how big the track is when they go to look it up later. By adding a coin, a ruler, or even your boot in your photos, it'll give you an approximate idea of the size of the track if you're looking at it later on. The next thing that we want to look for is the shape of the track. Different types of animals have different shapes of feet. Hooved animals like deer have very distinct tracks. Other animals like birds also have very recognizable tracks, with their 3 toes on the front and 1 on the back. Things can get a little trickier when we're looking at smaller mammals, but there's a few tricks that you can look for to help you figure out who they belong to. What is the general shape of the foot and the toe arrangement in the tracks? Raccoons, for example, have distinctly handprint-shaped feet, while porcupines' tracks look similar to our footprints, but with very long claw marks. Another thing you can look for is whether or not there are claws visible in the tracks. Canines, like dogs or foxes, often have visible claws in their footprints, while felines, like cats or lynx, do not because they have retractable claws. Next, look at the pattern of the tracks in the snow. This will tell you how the animal was moving. For example, these rabbit tracks are in groups of 4 as the rabbit was hopping through the snow. If we take a closer look, we can see in each group of 4 there are 2 smaller tracks from the front feet and 2 larger tracks from the back feet. Finally, we want to consider the location where we found the tracks. If you find small webbed tracks near a stream like this one, they could belong to a beaver or a muskrat. Likewise, if you find canine tracks near a very busy trail, it's more likely that they belong to a domestic dog than to a wolf.
Now let's put our skills to the test. What animal do you think these tracks belong to? A squirrel, fox, skunk, or bear? If you guessed squirrel, you are right. Using our 4 tools, we can see that these tracks are small in size, have a mammal-shaped foot with visible claw marks, are in a jumping pattern, and the location is heading towards a tree. Let's try another one. Who do you think these tracks belong to? A deer, beaver, raccoon, or duck? That's right, these are duck tracks. Even without knowing an exact size or location, you can see a very distinct bird's foot shape and webbing between the toes that tells us this track belongs to some sort of water bird. What about these tracks? Do they belong to a porcupine, bird, mouse, or wolf? These are mouse tracks. They're tiny in size and have a visible jumping pattern, but the biggest clue for them is the location. Small animals like mice live in the subnivean layer, underneath the snow, during the winter. So tiny tracks like these, going into a small hole, will usually belong to either a mouse or a vole.
My last suggestion is to take photos or keep a notebook and draw the wildlife tracks that you find. This will help you to keep track of what you've seen, and you can use it to identify tracks that you see again later on. I hope you enjoy wildlife tracking this winter. Send us a photo of the tracks you find at Rare Sites on Facebook or Instagram.